Hashtag single dad's first date was going so well, until she said, "You can leave. I'm a single mom." The wine glass shattered against the restaurant floor, splashing red across the white tablecloth like a wound. Mark froze, his hand still outstretched where the glass had been moments before. Across from him, Ellie's words hung in the air between them, "You can leave. I'm a single mom." But what happened next would change both their lives forever. If you've ever felt that moment when your heart stops and the world shifts beneath your feet, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that capture life's unexpected turning points. Mark Davidson hadn't been on a date in 3 years, not since Rebecca had walked out, leaving him alone with their 4-year-old daughter, Lily. The dating apps had sat untouched on his phone, intimidating in their cheerful simplicity. Who would want a 34-year-old architectural engineer with perpetual dark circles under his eyes and a daughter who still occasionally wet the bed? His mother had finally worn him down with her not-so-subtle hints about getting back out there, and his friend Carlos had set up the date with Ellie, a woman from his yoga class who Carlos swore was perfect for him. The evening had started awkwardly. Mark arrived 5 minutes late, flustered after the babysitter had been delayed. He'd apologized profusely, wiping sweaty palms on his slacks before sitting down across from Ellie Martin, with her warm brown eyes and laugh that made the corners of her eyes crinkle. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her dark skin, and a small silver pendant that caught the light when she moved. There was something unguarded about her smile that made his chest tighten. They'd fallen into surprisingly easy conversation. Ellie was a physical therapist who loved hiking and had strong opinions about breakfast cereals. She laughed at his terrible jokes and didn't seem to mind when he knocked over the salt shaker reaching for the bread basket. For the first time in years, Mark felt that forgotten spark, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, his life wasn't destined to be lonely nights watching cartoons and working after Lily went to bed. "So what do you do with your free time?" Ellie had asked, twirling pasta around her fork. "When you're not designing buildings, I mean." Mark had hesitated. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading. Carlos had mentioned Mark was a dad, hadn't he? He took a deep breath. "Actually, I don't have much free time. I have a daughter, Lily. She's 7. He watched Ellie carefully for any flicker of disappointment or retreat. But Ellie's smile had only grown warmer. "That's wonderful. What's she like?" And so Mark had opened up, telling stories about Lily's obsession with space, her collection of rocks that she insisted were potentially meteoric, her stubborn refusal to wear anything but purple socks. Ellie had listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Lily's antics. The knot in Mark's chest had loosened with each passing minute. Then came dessert. As they shared a chocolate mousse, Ellie had grown quiet, playing with her spoon. "Mark, I've had a really lovely evening," she'd said, her voice softer now. "But there's something I need to tell you before this goes any further." Mark had nodded, encouraging her to continue while taking another sip of his wine. "You can leave. I'm a single mom. I have twin boys, they're 6. Her voice had trembled slightly. "I know that's a lot to take on, and I understand if that changes things." That was when the wine glass had slipped from Mark's fingers. Now, as the waiter rushed over with towels and apologies tumbled from Mark's lips, Ellie was already reaching for her purse, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have," she began. "No, wait," Mark interrupted, reaching across the table to catch her hand. "I didn't drop the glass because of what you said. I dropped it because I couldn't believe what I was hearing." Ellie paused, confusion crossing her features. "I thought Carlos told you about Lily," Mark continued. "I've been nervous all night about being a single dad, worried you'd run for the hills when you found out. And here you are, worried about the exact same thing." The tension in Ellie's shoulders eased slightly. "Carlos never mentioned you had a daughter." Mark laughed, the sound surprised out of him. "And he never told me about your boys. Probably thought we'd never agree to meet if we knew," Ellie said, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. He's probably right, Mark admitted. That night had been 6 months ago. Now, Mark stood in his kitchen, making pancakes shaped like rocket ships while Lily directed his efforts from a stool beside him. From the living room came the sound of twin boys arguing over which superhero was strongest, while Ellie's voice mediated the dispute. Their first real date, after the wine-spilling disaster, had been at a park, with all 3 kids in tow. Mark had been terrified, but Lily and the twins, Lucas and Leo, had hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of a popular cartoon. While the children had raced around the playground, Mark and Ellie had talked honestly about the challenges of single parenthood, the guilt, the exhaustion, the moments of pure joy. Dating as single parents hadn't been easy. There were cancelled dates due to fevers, difficult conversations about discipline styles, and the complex navigation of introducing new authority figures into their children's lives. They'd moved slowly, carefully, always putting the children first. There had been tears, like when Leo had a meltdown, screaming that he wanted his real dad, not Mark. There had been tender moments, like when Lily had fallen asleep against Ellie's shoulder during movie night, and Ellie had sat motionless for 2 hours to avoid waking her. There had been challenges, blending routines, managing 3 different school schedules, finding time for just the 2 of them. "Dad, you're burning the rocket's booster," Lily pointed out, bringing Mark back to the present. "Mission Control, we have a problem," Mark announced, flipping the pancake to reveal a perfectly charred bottom. Lily giggled. Ellie appeared in the doorway, raising an eyebrow at the smoking pan. "Need reinforcements?" "Always," Mark replied, feeling that familiar warmth spread through his chest at the sight of her. Later that evening, after the children were finally asleep, a process that involved 3 bedtime stories, 2 glasses of water, and 1 monster check under the bed, Mark and Ellie collapsed onto the couch, their shoulders touching. "The twins want to know if we can get a dog," Ellie said, her head falling naturally onto Mark's shoulder. "Lily mentioned a lizard yesterday," Mark countered. "God help us," Ellie laughed softly. Mark took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. "You know, when you said, 'You can leave, I'm a single mom' that night, I almost did." Ellie turned to look at him, surprised. "Really?" Mark nodded. "Not because you were a single mom. Because I was scared. Dating is hard enough, dating with kids seemed impossible." "What changed your mind?" Mark thought about it. "I realized that someone who would say that, who would give me an out because she was thinking about what was best for her kids, that's exactly the kind of person I wanted to know better." Ellie's eyes softened. "And now?" "Now I'm grateful every day that I didn't leave. That we both stayed." Their path hadn't been perfect. There had been arguments about parenting styles, misunderstandings, moments of doubt. But there had also been family game nights that dissolved into helpless laughter, quiet conversations after the children were asleep, the gradual building of something that felt remarkably like home. The journey of blending their families was ongoing, sometimes messy, sometimes beautiful, always worth it. Because what Mark and Ellie had discovered was that the very thing they had feared would drive the other away, being single parents, was what had ultimately brought them together. Their shared experiences, challenges, and joys had created a foundation stronger than either could have built alone. As Ellie nestled against him on the couch, Mark thought about that broken wine glass and those words that had almost ended things before they began. Sometimes the things we think will break us are actually the beginning of something whole. And if you've ever found strength in your struggles or love in unexpected places, remember that your story matters too. Sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities can become our greatest connections, if only we're brave enough to share them.